love the new music. All right. Welcome to Crossing the Stream. How are you? I'm inviting everybody. Hey, welcome to Crossing the Streams. We're very excited to be here. We are live on so many platforms. It's not even legal in some countries what we're doing. So let me turn the wait bot off here. Mute your microphone.
Rosner's looking thin.
Rosner's looking good.
Okay.
He's like,
I'm glad that wasn't me.
We're just getting settled here as we go live. Are we live? Are we live? Yes, we are live.
It says live.
Yeah, nobody's. All right, I think everything's going good. All right, hey, welcome everybody to Crossing the Streams. We got to kick things off the way we always kick things off. Forgot to remind Tim about this. We got a theme song. Hit me up. Hit us up with the theme song. Kick it off, Tim. You only have to do the first scene.
All right, cool. Here's the story of some lonely fellows who spend way too much time watching the TV. All of them have jobs and friends. Well, not really. Just between you and me.
That was really good. Rosner.
They made a live show out of their hobby. Every TV watcher's TV watching dream. Jeff, Ron, Sal, and Bob, and there's Howard. They called it Crossing Streams.
Wow, you nailed that. Ron.
And then one day they went live on all the platforms. You could hear the people laugh and shout and scream. Still can't find another word that rhymes with platform. But man, we crossed the streams. Here we go.
It's rough, everybody.
We crossed the streams.
streams.
We crossed the
We
streams.
crossed the streams.
That's the way,
That's the way
we do it here. We crossed the streams.
Da, da, da.
All right. Oh, we got Lee. Hey, Lee.
I'm here, Lee. I'm here. Hi, Jerry.
Howard sometimes.
Jerry Chacon.
All right. We are ready. I got to turn that off. We've got a great show for you today. We got our man, Tim, back. It's been a while.
Timmy.
Tim's
Howdy.
Howdy, Tim.
How you doing, guys?
Loving life. Tim, remind everyone where we can find you on the podcast.
All right. So, well, there's 3 different podcasts. Focus on Forward's on hiatus right now. But if you want to talk to me about Focused on Forward, come to @PodcastFOF on Twitter, @Funny Sci-Fi. That's the other show, Funny Science Fiction. And our new show is Pop Culture Addicts, @PCA Pod Show. That's all on Twitter. Those are the best places to find us. And of course, you can find Focused on Forward, Funny Science Fiction, and Pop Culture Addicts at your favorite audio podcast destination.
All right. That's a lot.
Fantastic.
That's a lot of Tim. I don't know if I can handle that much Tim. I'm your host.
Probably not.
I'm one of your hosts of this amazing broadcast, Jeff Dwoskin. You can find
Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Bob. We can find me every week updating my podcast live from Detroit, the Jeff Dwoskin Comedy Show. I got amazing guests this week. The amazing Paul Provenza. He did the Aristocrats and a bunch of
May I make a comment about your podcast?
Oh,
of course.
The Jeff Dwoskin Show.
Yeah.
People should be watching this. The guests that you get and the conversations you have are some of the best out there. And the Provenza one is that's going to be listened to tomorrow. I can't wait to hear that one because I love Provenza.
Oh, thank you so much.
He had that series for a little while, Green Room, on Showtime. That was great if you're a fan of stand-up comedy. It was really good.
Really, he did comics only on the comedy channel, which became Comedy Central. You're tuning in on Fireside. Hope all you guys doing well. We got some video going on there too. If you happen to have the Fireside app, you can join us and talk to us live. You know,
Ooh.
you got to have an Apple phone to do that. I apologize. I realized I was muted, so we missed the first minute. But just the first minute, we're fine now, figuring out all this technology. So, Bob, tell everyone about your amazing podcast, Sal and Bob.
Oh, well, thank you. That's the Sal and Bob Show. We've been at it for 3 years now. We've got 160 episodes. It's ranked anywhere between 50 and 60 in the United States for comedy interviews. It stars my partner Sal D'Amelio, very funny comedian from Detroit, and moi.
And Sal's usually here, but he's off.
Yeah.
And then Ron and Howard are seen here every Wednesday.
Yeah.
at 30.
Yeah.
Hey, to all our listeners, Ron and I need an idea for a podcast. We got to do something.
We do, but the
We
problem
gotta
is,
come up
Howard,
with-
we don't agree on anything. So that's the problem. That's
Well,
right
but
there
that would
an
make
issue.
a great podcast.
That's the
I
format
have an
right
idea.
there.
You could call it the Ron Howard podcast and confuse the hell out of everyone.
That's actually
I
true.
wanted to do a podcast with you guys. Ron and Howard teach Jeff sports.
Oh, that's a pretty short podcast, but we probably could figure something out. Little fun fact: my middle name actually is Howard. Not kidding.
Oh,
So
there you
Ron
go.
Howard has been my issue and opportunity my entire life.
Wow.
What are you going to do?
Anyway,
these are happy days.
These are happy days. Amazing. So welcome everybody for just tuning in to Crossing the Streams. We cover amazing shows that you should be watching. People keep asking to be on the show. I'm like, awesome. Just so we're gonna have new guests coming up. If you're interested, let me know. But here we answer the question that haunts everybody. Oh my God, what should I be watching on TV? And here we are. We're gonna answer it for you. And this is what we do. This is our 46th episode. Am I right?
47.
47. 40. Can you believe it? 40
47, right?
episode. That's right.
Huh?
Last week in episode 46 was a great one. We talked about the movies that made us. Howard talked about that, which is an amazing series on Netflix that covers a lot of great movies and the stories behind them. Coda, which Ron talked about, which is a beautiful movie. Dune, which I think caused controversy. That's a review. People are either loving Dune or not liking Dune. I think we sat on the middle there. My stance is too much sand. There's a lot of sand. And Al covered Rita Moreno, Just a Girl Who Decided to Go for It, which is an amazing documentary on Rita. So this week, though, we got an amazing show. So if you're thinking, oh, I want to get my questions ready for the show, or if you're on Fireside, if you want to join us, The Devil Next Door. I have no idea what that is, but it sounds dangerous. Basketball or Nothing, we're going to be talking about on Netflix. I'm going to talk about The Wire Season 1. That's part of my Wire journey. Mm-hmm. Bob's going to cover What We Do in the Shadows, which is I'm excited about because it's a show I've always wanted to watch. And Howard's going to talk about a new show that just started called Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yeah.
I've heard of that.
That just came back for yet another season. So that's pretty cool. So, all right.
Hey, before we get started, I do have a Rosner's rant. So I got an email right before. This is not what delayed me from getting to the show on time, but it came. When we were kids, everybody was always excited because Black Friday was the day after Thanksgiving, and there were fantastic sales, and it was awesome. And then as we became adults, it was like, well, they've extended the hours. Now they actually do it. They open the stores early, and people we knew were shopping at 2 a.m. Now they're offering Black Friday sales before Halloween. Like, why not just set the prices at the lower price and offer them regularly through the year? I mean, do you have to really? Does it need to be 5 weeks of the Black Friday deals? Like, I'm all in favor of getting a good price on something, but it's not a Black Friday deal anymore. You're just selling shit cheaper. That's all. Stop with the Black Friday emails. Enough. And I've ordered so much online, especially over the last year, that or 18 months, that every business under the sun is sending me Black Friday deal emails. And yeah, it's crazy. Like Costco's like, our Black Friday prices are out now. No, it's not Black Friday then.
There's no rant like a Rosner rant. It used to be exciting, right? You'd go and then you'd shop, you'd have to make that. And then you started to feel guilty because all these people are working on the holiday. And so I could save 50 cents on a pack of gum or on a DVD that I normally wouldn't have bought anyway, stuff like that. So I hear you. I feel
I will just say this, just in defense of the folks that are trying to sell shit out there. I haven't been to a mall in 18 months, like literally. It's like there's a section of the population that's just not shopping retail anymore. Oh. So I do get that there's a added urgency to.
I went to the
stuff
mall
right now.
with my wife, and the first thing we did after 18 months was fight about where to park. Because you have to pick a strategic spot to park, right? And so you have to, but anyway. So let's talk about our first show. Let's get into one of our first show. Welcome everyone on Fireside. If you want to talk about any of the shows we're talking about today, or any ones that we've talked about in the past, just hop on, and I'd love to have you come on stage. And we're going to be trying to change the video camera as we go. But right now we got Ron, and Ron Lippett's going to talk about The Devil Next Door.
The Devil Next Door. Yet another algorithm from our friends at Netflix that put it in front of me. And I said, heck yeah, I love World War II. And I love mysteries, and I love documentaries, and I love things that don't really have full answers. Nice job, Netflix. So sure enough, I did check this out. I was familiar with the story of John Demjanjuk, just from what I read in the papers, and I had a very distant understanding of exactly what went on. And for those that don't know the story, John Demjanjuk was a Ukrainian dude who moved to Cleveland after the war. He never tried to deny the fact that he had served in the German military, but what had turned out to be the issue for the United States was that he lied on his immigration forms, and it turned out that he, in actuality, was being accused of being one of the most, if not the most notorious concentration camp guards at Treblinka in world history. In fact, he was known by the folks that had been at Treblinka as Ivan the Terrible. And this was a moniker that followed him, right? And so what had transpired was a long series of court battles here in the United States, which ultimately revoked his citizenship and sent him to Israel to be tried for crimes against humanity. Now, mind you, they can't prove that the guy was Ivan the Terrible. All they can prove was that he served in the German military, and just like many people did from the Ukraine. Sure, he's a bad guy, and they definitely knew he lied on his immigration, but they couldn't prove that he was this man that was responsible for thousands and thousands of deaths. But what transpires in this 5-episode documentary on Netflix, each episode usually between 45 minutes and 60 minutes, it was a series of, at the time, and we're talking in the 70s and 80s, and then ultimately in the 90s, a series of an ever shrinking population of Holocaust survivors. I mean, this is an aging population at this point. And it was a series of aged people seeing this guy in the flesh for the first time since the war, and you could see the pain on their faces when they come to get in front of this John Demjanjuk, because they recognize him for exactly who he is, and he is Ivan the Terrible. And the documentary goes into great detail to point out all the absolutely horrendous things that I won't go into in detail, but they do in the documentary, about just how much joy he got from the suffering of the people he put into the gas chambers, and so on and so forth. Without ruining the story, because this is historical, and so I'm not ruining anything. He was found guilty. He was sentenced to death. But then in the appeal, there were problems. There were issues in the appeals. There were issues with the credibility of a number of senile Holocaust survivors. There just were a lot of problems, and they ended up finding him innocent. He moved back to Cleveland, and that's where the story was supposed to end. But it didn't end there. And ultimately, the United States said, you lied on your immigration forms. We know that's a fact. You can't change that. And so they ended up deporting him finally and ultimately back to Germany. And that's where he lived out the last days of his life in a home where he was very sick and ended up dying in Germany. And that's the end of this. That's the end of the story. But here's what you find out. This is the most interesting part about the documentary. That coming out of World War II, the United States was beginning to ramp up its true engagement with the Soviets in the Cold War. And the fact is, there were no more anti-communist people in the world than former Nazis. It's like you're talking about the polar political opposites, the fascists and the communists, right? And what you find out is that in the 40s and 50s, that this country of ours openly welcomed many former Nazis into the United States because they knew that they were tried and true anti-communists in the time of McCarthyism and whatnot. So it opens up a whole story about, who we are as a country and what we stand for and what we welcome here as part of the fabric of the United States. And it's part of kind of the conversation today. It's, who are we? Like, what does it mean to be American? And that was, I thought, the super interesting part of the end of the John Demjanjuk story. So it's a terrific documentary. They do a very great job. It's hard to watch. I'm not going to lie. It's very detailed, and they talk in very, very specific terms what happened. But it is a very thought-provoking documentary. As you guys know, I love documentaries or any shows that make you think days and days and days after you watch it. And this 5-part documentary has done that.
So interesting that you bring that up about the Nazis coming to the United States, because if you watched, and I don't think we've covered the show on the show, but Hunters on Amazon with Al Pacino. It's about a bunch of people hunting Nazis, but it's loosely based on something called Operation Paperclip, which is a real life program authorized by the government that welcomed Germans and Nazis into the United States.
Yes, especially into the military apparatus, right?
Well, they spent a fair amount of time, Jeff, talking about Werner von Braun, who was a notorious Nazi, but who spearheaded our rocket program and basically got us to the moon ahead of the Soviets. He was fervently anti-Soviet and worked tirelessly for the Americans to see to it that we were ahead of the Soviets.
Without von Braun, we would not have beat the Russians to the moon.
No doubt. So it's politics, right? And it's also optics, right? I think people were done with the war, and I think people, particularly Americans and Truman at the time, and then ultimately, getting into McCarthyism, I think Americans, by definitely the government, were willing to wash their hands of the whole hatred of Germans and wanted to profit from what were some very good opportunities for the United States.
Yeah, it was all about being opportunistic and being able to just get what they could get, regardless of what they did before.
Yeah, and I'll just say one last thing. We can move on, and that is they go to great length to talk about how many former German and Ukrainian and people that served the Nazi regime came to the United States and worked in factories, Ford, GM, and about how fabulous of workers they were. Like that, just as a community of people, they worked incredibly hard. They did their job. They were never late. They had a code of ethics that perhaps the suggestion that Native American and Americans who were in the country before the war would not have. So companies like Ford and GM really benefited from having folks from Germany come to our factories here in the States. Interesting.
Hey, Ron, this was not a traditional Netflix. Could have easily been an hour and a half documentary. Instead, they put it into 5 episodes. Was it?
Listen, they definitely could have told the story of John Demjanjuk himself in 1 episode. So there is some truth to that. But it's a long story. There were a lot of ups and downs, and they tell a lot of it from the perspective of the people who suffered the most. And so I didn't think it was unnecessary. I thought it was well done.
Good.
If you enjoyed Ron's review, check out his other uplifting reviews in previous episodes. You can check those out on most of them covering the 9/11.
This is why you get me first, Jeff. You hit me up. Now we can benefit from all the positivity yet to come.
Tim, if you can grab the camera for Fireside, and then we're gonna turn it over now. That was great, Ron. That was really, really great.
Thanks, guys.
So I'm actually looking forward to seeing that. So, all right. So we have the next show we're going to discuss. I am not familiar with this one either, so I'm looking forward to our guest, Tim Beisiegel, to cover it in amazing detail. Basketball or Nothing on Netflix.
So how do I grab the camera here?
I'm wondering when it's my turn.
I invited you to interview mode, so if you can do that.
There it is.
You can't figure it out, it's okay.
I got it now.
Okay. It's just we're having fun. with the Fireside.
There it is.
There, look at you.
Yay!
Yay! With a big glare over my head. You're welcome.
It
All
is
right.
good.
So,
All right. What do we got?
Um,
Basketball? Or
yes.
nothing. Take it
So
away.
it's another Netflix documentary. I did that because I wanted to impress Ron and make him think I was smart. And so this one is actually really cool. I watched it a little while back, and I was actually starting to watch it again when Jeff and I started talking about me being on the show tonight. So it's a 6-episode, and it does require all 6 episodes to tell the story, because it's following a high school team through the season. And it's interesting because it's not just your average high school team. It's a team of Navajo kids on a reservation in Arizona. And it's interesting because this little town called Chinle, a lot of the kids, they don't have running water, they don't have electricity, out in some of these areas. And it's one of those things where, as you're watching the story of these kids, you start thinking, am I watching a story of a third world nation? Oh no, this is in Arizona. Okay, so this is happening in the United States, and some of the poverty that some of these kids are going through, and what they're dealing with, and what they're fighting through. But it's interesting because of the size, and they talk about this, the size of the Navajo. They're not an overly large or of stature human. They say that they're smaller in stature in most respects. So they have to win basketball games with speed. And so they play a version of basketball. We call it run and gun. They call it res ball. So they like to play res ball. And their hope is that they're just going to tire you out, run you up and down the court, and run you ragged. And so up until this season, that's what the Chinle team has done, but they haven't had the best of success. But they brought in this new coach, and he's more defensive minded. So he's trying to teach them a new strategy. So it's really interesting because it not only talks about what the team itself is going through, trying to adapt to a new playing style and trying to adapt to a new thought process, but then it also shows some of the problems that are found on the reservation for these young people. There's nothing for them to do outside of playing basketball. There's a lot of, talks about the prevalent alcoholism that is around, and what they're having to deal with, the poverty that they're having to deal with, how they're trying to help their family. And that many of these kids, their hope is that they're going to go to college, and that somebody will give them a sports scholarship, and somebody will take a chance on them and give them the opportunity to go to college to get a degree, so they can get a job off of the reservation to make money, so that they can help support their family. Because they know that on the reservation, the chances of them getting a job at something outside of like a school or something educational is pretty slim. But it's really cool. But yeah, it takes 6 episodes. Each of them are about 30 to 35 minutes. So it's not a hard watch. It's pretty easy to watch, but it does make you think, a couple days down the road, as you kind of reflect on the episodes and what these kids are going through and what they're trying to accomplish throughout the course of the season. And so, like I said, it follows them from preseason all the way up to the state championship game. And it's just really cool, man. To see these kids grow and see these kids kind of like blossom as some of them who are kids who used to sit off in the backside are now moving forward in life, because this coach took a chance on the team. This coach took a chance because he lives like 100 miles away and commutes on the weekends, goes home, comes back for the week to the school, goes home on the weekend to visit his family. It's just really cool. I strongly recommend you checking it out. So
is this a multi-part show, or is it one sitting, or
6 episodes?
6 episodes.
Okay. And what's it shown on? Where can I see it?
This is on Netflix.
Netflix. Okay.
Yeah. So it's on Netflix. It's called Basketball or Nothing. 6 episodes, 30, 35 minutes a piece. And a lot of high school sports. The one thing that I find interesting, and for as much poverty as they have in this area, excuse me, I just punch my filter there, no big deal. the high school basketball stadium that they play in, and I call it a stadium because that's what it is. It's not a gymnasium attached to the school. It's a separate building, it's pretty amazing. Like, I look at that and I'm like, there are class A schools in Texas and Dallas that don't have, gyms this nice, ball courts this nice. So, but.
All right.
Interesting.
So the townsfolk really like the team.
Well, do they do a nice recap of where most of the main kids are at the end of the series?
To some degree, yeah. I mean, they talk about where they're headed in life, where they hope they're headed in life, but it unfortunately, I thought it kind of cut off. It would have been nice to have a little bit more of a retrospective of, hey, 6 months later, this is where this kid's at. 6 months later, this is where this kid's at. Unfortunately, it's kind of like, hey, well, that was the game, and this is where we think this kid's going.
If they do that, it kind of limits the potential of the sequel.
Right. Yeah.
It's
basketball.
What the characters do is just some clever plot point. Yeah. Throwaway.
Yeah, they're going to have another one's called basketball or something.
Yeah.
So,
or
basketball.
Do it like they'll do it like the UK Office and have a Christmas 1 hour Christmas special recapping everything. Yeah.
Well, I as you were describing it, Tim, I was thinking about, I'm sure this is probably not comparable, but I was thinking about, in the 80s and 90s when NHL hockey, particularly here in Detroit, started looking at the European and Soviet way of playing hockey, right? Completely different than the North American style of hockey. Changed the game utterly. Of course, you have to have the people to be able to play it. But my point is, as you were describing the way that they kind of shocked the system with their style of play, that's kind of what went through my mind is how European hockey changed to the NHL here.
Right. The Loyola Marymount method.
There you go.
College basketball.
Yeah. So they went from a res ball style where, like I said, it was run and gun, just go. And these kids, like most coaches want you to work the ball around, find the right shot, not just a shot. These kids are running down the court, and it's like, if you're open, you hoist that sucker and you go, and a couple of these kids just wondered. Yes, I know. We're talking around Jeff about the sports ball.
Very true.
I don't know anything about sports.
Yeah. That's why I call it the sports ball. But yeah, so they want to hoist this thing as quick as they can and hopefully get the ball back and, just kind of keep running and gunning. And he's trying to get them to intelligently make 3-4 passes before they take a shot, move the ball around, get somebody open for a nice set shot. And that's not what they want to do. So
3 passes.
It's funny you say that, Fred, if I may interject, one of my all-time favorites. So Jeff and I have been friends for over 35 years. And to this day, one of my favorite conversations with Jeff ever was, I can't remember who the third party was, but the third party and I were talking about fantasy football. And Jeff interrupted and said, I'm going to start a fantasy life league. We're like, what do you mean? He's like, you draft your friends. Like, if they get a new job, you get more points. They have a kid, you get more points. It was one of my favorites. And that was probably like 25 years ago, and I remember that conversation to this day.
I remember if I'm going to a sporting event where like Roz was, or like our buddy Dan Lippett, hey Bob, take the interview mode while we're talking. I would listen to stuff on the radio, and then I would show up, and I'm like, oh yeah, here.
You start parroting back some stats.
Yeah, just
I'm like, wow, you sounded just like Sports Center, Jeff.
He's as cool as the other side of the pillow. Do you see that, guys?
We're pushing Fireside to the app now, trying to get Bob to.
All right, you want me to turn this on?
Well, yeah. Oh my God, you did it! All right, there's proof that this is all right. What we do in the shadows. I'm excited to hear Bob talk about this. This looks amazing.
If my mic works, are we on? Are we good?
Yeah, it's working.
Okay, so I have to say that I'm not a big fan of episodic TV. And so to get into this, it took some doing for me because I don't want to have to be anchored to something for weeks and weeks at a time, except the Dexter reboot coming up this weekend. I am getting an echo here. Which one do I need to turn off?
You're fine.
Okay. So What We Do in the Shadows is the funniest show I've seen in years. Nadja, Nandor, and Laszlo and Colin Robinson are 4 vampires that live in this ridiculous house on Staten Island. And it is the wacky exploits of these 4 idiots, 3 of which are traditional vampires in that they turn into bats when they need to. They fry in the sun. Good choice, Jerry. They all the traditional blood-sucking stuff. But Colin Robinson is different. He lives in this house, but he's what they call a daywalker because he doesn't have the superpowers. He doesn't drink blood. He's an energy vampire. And his power is actually boring people to death or enraging them. And he feeds off the anxiety and their anger when he's just driving them crazy with his banality, right? And so you can imagine that it sets up a lot of fish out of water stuff. The 4 actors that do this show are all comedians. And I don't know that they all I don't know if they all started out as stand-ups and became comedic actors, but they all have stand-up backgrounds. They all have improv backgrounds, which really kind of sets the show apart. It's a single camera.
Was Jermaine Clement one of them? Is Jermaine Clement one of them from the original?
I think he shows up later on. He's a producer. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was. I think he did the original show that it was based on, or I think it might have been.
Yeah, there was a 2014
mockumentary
movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Waititi.
There's a movie for this that sets it all up.
Yeah.
Right. That was Jermaine Clement.
Also,
that was seen that.
in the Shadows, the movie.
Yeah, right. And they were going to have a sequel, What We Do in the Daylight, but it didn't come out. Anyway, this it's a single camera shoot, and it's just absurd. It's about half scripted, half improv. And one of these days they're going to put out outtakes for this show, and it's just going to be ridiculously funny. Nick Kroll is a regular nemesis. He shows up.
Nick Kroll.
Yeah. In one of the earlier episodes, he and Laszlo are fighting over this hat that's made out of witch's skin, and that it's a cursed hat, and they both want it. And even though every time they put it on, something horrible happens to them within seconds, they both are fighting after. It's just absurd. The storylines are crazy. Doug Jones plays the leader of the vampires, this... I don't know what you'd call him, King of the Vamps, right? And he comes to live with them in their house, and they want to kill him, but they're so inept they can't pull it off. And he wants to go on a night on the town in Manhattan, and they wind up going to a rave and biting these people who are all drugged out. So they become drugged out, and they can't get home in time. It's just and the fact Colin Robinson, the energy vampire, in fact they always call him Colin Robinson. It's never Colin, it's Colin Robinson, and he's just a bore, and he drags everybody down. But he does have some usefulness when people need to be bored to death, and they employ him in that manner. So there's a lot of stuff going on in this show. What I love about it is that in one show, they had Tilda Swinton, Paul Rubens, Dave Bautista, Vanessa Bayer from Saturday Night Live, Haley Joel Osment, Evan Rachel Wood, and Danny Trejo, all in one show. They played the vampirical council that were trying these 4 morons for trying to kill the king of the vampires. So I'm only on season 1. I'm done with that. Hysterical. Can't wait for number 2.
So
how many seasons are there? Because I think they just
I just looked it up. It's 4 seasons.
they just
That's
started
good.
a new one, I think. didn't
Yeah.
they?
And I just
Well, there's 3 in the
recognized
can. Yeah.
Bob, the actor Mark is his last name Proksch.
Yes. Yeah.
Who plays the vampire who sucks the energy. That is the same actor who plays Price on Better Call Saul, which is one of the best.
That's right. Right.
It's one of the best characters on Better Call Saul. So that's a talented dude. I'm gonna have to check this show out.
Yeah, Colin Robinson. He gets in a fight with the former SNL girl. I can't remember, Vanessa Bayer. She comes into his office and challenges him for supremacy because she's an emotional vampire. She's bringing the whole office down, bumming everybody out. And he's seeing that he can't suck the life out of them by boring them to death. And I don't want to tell you what happens, but it's a really funny episode. Funny show, man. Really funny.
Yeah, I think if I'm not mistaken. Go ahead, Jeff.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think Taika Waititi and Jermaine Clement. Jermaine's from Flight of the Conchords. If you don't know, plus has had some fantastic movie roles. Dinner for Schmucks. He was fantastic in that, amongst other movies. But I think they created it, and that's why it's got that total sarcastic edge to it, which is it's a lot of the Australian and New Zealand comedies that have been out over the past what was it was it Jonah something, I can't remember, on HBO. They all have that super sarcastic edge to it, which is great.
Definitely, tons of sarcasm. One of the things I like about it, I'll wrap up my review, is that they are respectful, and you can tell they love vampire lore. So they have just enough special effects to pull off, the flying and the creepy stuff going on, but they don't dwell on it. The funny stuff always happens in the dialogue.
So it's not like Charmed, where it's just bad special effects.
I went to watch it. I went to watch this years ago, Bob, and I convinced myself I had to watch the movie first, and I couldn't find the movie anywhere for free. So I never did it, and I never watched it. So
You cheap bastard.
I know.
I don't know what the movie's like, but the series stands up all on its own.
All right, I'm gonna jump in. You convinced Casey Ryan plot. I don't know if anyone on Fireside. Look at me. I'm looking at you. Wants to come on and talk about this show, what we do in the shadows. Please raise your hand. Happy to. But in the meantime, we will move on. And we've got some other shows to talk about. Bob, that was fantastic.
Nice job.
Ladies and gentlemen, Bob Phillips, our very own.
By the way, line of the night goes to Fred DeCarroll, by the way, with his quick one-liner there. Boxing vampires? for a Bob review.
I know. There's going to be one.
During the basketball segment, Fred did ask an MSU one. MSU won. They beat U of M. So what do we got? Oh, it's me, Howard. I'm gonna put you on video because you're gonna be next.
Oh, fantastic.
And then you can do it.
I get 2 segments on camera. Fantastic.
I know. You're pretty cool. I'm gonna go. So I am going down the journey of The Wire. This is season 1. I'm specifically talking about season 1. Have you guys seen The Wire?
Yes.
Have you seen all of The Wire?
No.
I don't know if I've seen all of it, but that's a great show.
So did we lose Rosner? What's going on here? So I think something must have happened. Oh, all right. Well, okay. I think and now Tim's going back and forth. All right. So The Wire. So one of the things that I've been wanting to watch The Wire for a while. It's the amazing show on HBO from like the early 2000s, I think 2002. But when The Wire generally comes into conversation, it's in the context of what's the greatest show of all time. And then people argue between Breaking Bad and The Wire, right? So I do believe, having not seen The Wire, of all other shows, Breaking Bad is the greatest show ever in terms of just from start to finish, a perfect start to finish.
There's a few Soprano people that might argue, but okay.
Sure, but that's fair. That's fine. We can
Sal
have
in particular.
with Sal. Okay, I'm actually restarting The Sopranos starting today. I
It's-
started rewatching the anyway. So Howard's back. So anyway, so the point is, as I started to watch, so I went through season 1 of The Wire. It's 13 episodes, and the story is it takes place in the streets of Baltimore. It's meant to be a microcosm of the U.S. war on drugs and just kind of decay in general in cities. And it's shown through the eyes of the policemen, and then it's also shown through the eyes of the drug dealers. And so it just takes you through this particular case. One thing specifically that I learned really and majorly was it must kind of stink to be a cop, because it seems like there's so much politics about being a cop. Like the one guy is trying to be a good cop, and then everyone's mad at him because they're going to ruin the numbers, even though he's working the case. And it's just like, and it's not your normal. You got Detective Jimmy, what's his name? Dominic West, the main character, and he's like working the case, and he's just busting down everybody, all the norms. He doesn't care. He wants to make this case, and that kind of goes through the entire season. And at the end, he gets screwed. He gets like this horrible shit job and reassigned, and you're introduced to all these characters that are kind of misfits, but eventually have all these amazing characteristics that when they come together help to solve this crime. One guy was shoved off to the pawn shop division, whatever that is. It turns out like he's like, and all he does is sit there all day and make furniture, like little dollhouse furniture, gorgeous dollhouse furniture. And they make a joke, which is probably true. He makes a fortune selling the dollhouse furniture, but he's the smartest of them all. Like he's like one of the best cops on the force, but somehow he did something wrong and they just shoved him into this. They just sidelined his entire career. And so that part was interesting. So the other interesting thing is it's about getting a wiretap, and they have to wiretap pagers and payphones. And a lot of the technology, obviously dated because it's early 2000s, but it's incredible to watch how they had to do something just 20 years ago that today would probably be like, I mean, I don't mean like legally throughout whatever paperwork you'd need to do, but it was insane what they had to go through to get these taps and to get everything going, and just the technology that they were using and all that thing. And the cast is insane. I mean, the people in this cast, I mean, Michael B. Jordan's in this cast. Is this where Idris Elba kind of got his start? I mean, he's one of the main guys. There's two of the guys went on to Lawrence Gillard Jr. and Seth Gilliam both went on to The Walking Dead. Of course, Michael Kenneth Williams, who just passed away recently, who played Omar. I mean, it's an insane cast, and I'm not even naming half of them. I mean, it's like you watch and you're like, oh my God, it's crazy. So I enjoyed it, and I can see where it's similar to Breaking Bad in story structure. At least that's the impression I'm getting. And what I mean by that is, to me, Breaking Bad always lived in a particular world. And then as that season ended, where you thought it was ending, like it ended, right? Every season of Breaking Bad kind of ended, but then just enough happened that opened up the world a little bit more, right? Where you started to understand this was part of something a lot bigger that they hadn't let on to before, but was perfectly natural. It's like in Breaking Bad where they, you started to learn. He thought he was like the drug kingpin, and you start to learn about the whole Los Pollos, the chicken plate, all those
Hermanos.
Yep.
And
Los Pollos Hermanos.
I can see where this sort of has possibly the same. As I started to watch the first episode of season 2, how it sort of has like a blossoming thing where it's going to keep opening up because they spread all the characters out. So now they're all kind of bringing something different to the storylines.
Yeah.
And so that's where I can see where it's going to kind of explode. But like, again, I've only done season 1. Amazing. Loved it. I thought it was just great playing both sides, watching both sides, the cops and the drug dealers. And it just I couldn't stop watching it.
So one, I'll just chime in that one of the things that I think that was super breakthrough about this show, on top of its amazing, choreography and the acting talent and whatnot, is that it was run and acted by mostly people of color, and that was kind of a breakthrough element of this show, which was an amazing piece of it. Ironically, did you mention Aidan Gillen? Aidan Gillen plays one of the recurring characters, Tommy Carcetti, and he is a major character on The Wire and also a major character in Game of Thrones, also arguably one of the best shows in history. So you get that crossover of one. He's the only one I can think of that is in two of the greatest shows in history off of The Wire. So it's an amazing show.
So interestingly enough, as people talk about it now as, one of the greatest shows of all time, as I wandered to the Wikipedia, it said, despite the critical acclaim, The Wire received poor Nielsen ratings, which Simon, the creator, attributes to the complexity of the plot, a poor time slot, heavy use of slang, and then it mentions, and because of the predominantly black cast. I'm reading from Wikipedia. Critics felt the show was testing the attention span of its audience and felt it was mistimed in the wake of the launch of such crime dramas as The Shield. So it's interesting, like when you read things about things that when they talked about something then that later become classics and kind of like comparing it to The Shield. I mean, that's a good show, but nobody talks about the greatest shows and says The Shield. They'd say The Wire, right?
Yeah,
it's all about The Wire. So it's interesting.
Yeah,
it's like,
Jerry's asking what platform. It's on HBO, but I believe you can catch it on Netflix too, right?
It's HBO Max has all of The Wire, for sure. That's where I'm watching it.
Yeah, it's definitely an HBO conceived show.
When you launch HBO Max, you have to wait 5 minutes because apparently it wants to load the entire HBO Max every time.
I know
HBO Max. I don't know.
I know it's the worst. And then it asks, before it asks you,
Howard, I think of you now every time I go on Amazon Prime, and I remember the rant you had a while back about how you can't skip the intros.
It's ridiculous. It still pisses me off.
Every time I'm on Amazon Prime, I think about that. Think about that with you.
It's
I do want to say
HBO allows it. Netflix allows it. Apple Plus allows it. Amazon Prime, no. They don't have that technology.
I think it's it's just the software. They just didn't do it. You know what I mean? They have to build it.
But it's ridiculous. It's like I'm stuck. I was a DirecTV guy for 18 years. I moved to my new house last fall, and I have trees that block a satellite. So I had to go with my only cable option, which is Spectrum Charter cable. It is the worst technology. Every other cable system in the country offers whole home, now voice operated from your remote, all of that. Nope. You can only record DVR, whatever's on the box you're watching. You can only watch it on that box. It's awful.
You're like living like 10 years ago. Oh, I do want to say
it's terrible.
I do want to just squeeze one thing in for anyone who's who's hanging in there. This is a special treat for you. And I'm going to mention this multiple times, multiple episodes. So if
it's kind of our Black Friday deal.
No, it's even. This would be considered a Dwoskin rant. As much as I loved the morning show, season 1, season 2, which I've probably watched 7 episodes, 6 or 7, so 7 hours of my life wasted. Horrible.
That's unfortunate.
Yourselves. I'll go into it deeper in another session. Because I want to let you go.
I was just getting ready to start watching season 2.
It's garbage. All right, let's talk about Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yeah.
All right.
New show on HBO.
Just coming back up. Howard Rosner, take it away.
Yeah, so it's funny. The reason I chose to do Curb Your Enthusiasm, which I know is not a new show, it's starting just 2 episodes into its 11th season. But people I've talked to lately about the show, maybe watched years ago, but haven't watched the last couple of seasons. So I thought it was relevant. So we'll just start with, again, HBO Max has all the seasons. And for those who are totally unfamiliar, created and starring Larry David, who was the co-creator along with Jerry Seinfeld of Seinfeld, the voice of George Steinbrenner famously in Seinfeld episodes, and the George Costanza character very, very much based on Larry David himself. So if you like that, Curb Your Enthusiasm is George Costanza uncomfortableness to the nth degree. It centers on Larry David, who it plays himself basically, and or in an expanded, elaborate version of himself. The show is absolutely hysterical and absolutely uncomfortable every episode. He is hysterical, but one of the worst people. His character is one of the worst people in the history of mankind. He says whatever comes to his mind, does whatever comes he wants to do. It's always getting him in trouble. Every episode is very similar, just like a Seinfeld episode. There's multiple plot points, multiple points of discomfort that somehow by the end of the episode are going to intertwine, and they always do. The other thing that I love about the show, the other two major things I love about the show is, number one, that a significant portion of it is improv, and they're getting people who are big time actors and actresses to do improv that are not traditionally improvers, and it's great. They pull them out of their element, and it's great. The other major thing that I love is every season is set up the same way. In the first episode of the season, they launch a kind of general background story that becomes the focal point of the season, at least a thread that runs through the entire season. And then by the end of the season is a more prominent plot point. For example, this season, in the first 2 minutes of the first episode, somebody breaks into Larry's house, and then trying to escape after robbing him, falls into his pool and drowns in the pool because Larry did not have the required 5-foot or 4-foot high fencing around the pool. And in that first episode, the brother of the guy who died blackmails Larry into forgetting about it and not bringing a huge lawsuit because of it if Larry will cast his daughter, who has only done high school theater and is atrocious, as the lead in his new series on Netflix. And that is going to be a general theme throughout this whole season. The seasons before, one of the seasons, I think it was season 7, was them deciding to do a Seinfeld reunion. And so all the characters are there throughout the year. Maybe my favorite season was season 9, I believe it was, where Larry, I keep calling him Jerry. Larry was writing a musical called Fatwa that was a theatrical, hysterical version of the Salman Rushdie situation, and goes on Jimmy Kimmel to kind of make jokes about it. And then the Ayatollah actually puts an actual fatwa on him, commanding Muslims to kill him. And so that he's, the themes are always hysterical. So that's the gist of it. The characters in the show, he's great, but some of the main characters in the show, JB Smoove plays Leon Black, who lives with Larry, kind of his right hand best friend, sort of now. everything he does is improv, and it is incredible. His timing is impeccable comically. It is just fantastic. Jeff Garland, who plays his agent, is great as well. But how Susie Essman, who plays Susie, Jeff Garland's wife in the show, how she has not won a Best Supporting Actress in a Comedy Emmy is beyond me.
Yep.
She and Larry, when they argue and they insult each other, it is the funniest shit. It kills me. I'm literally laughing out loud in front of the TV. It is just one of the best characters on television. Sadly, the other great character for the first 9 seasons of the show was Bob Einstein, played Super Dave Osborne, and played Marty Funkhauser in the show, passed away a few years ago. He was the other great character. Richard Lewis, the stand-up, has been on since the beginning of the series, playing one of his best friends. He is great every time he's on. This year, the list of A-list stars that are slated to be on the show is spectacular. There's already been a couple, and there's going to be even more. John Hamm was on in an episode last year, and he was in the first episode of this season. It's just great. They take great actors and take them out of their comfort zone to do this comic improv. If you have not watched Curb Your Enthusiasm, go back and watch the entire thing. There's a handful of episodes that are musts. Crazy Eyes Killer is a fantastic episode. Palestinian Chicken is the best episode of the show, in my opinion, by far. But go back and watch it. And if you used to watch and haven't in a while, get off your ass and get caught up and start watching season 11.
Wow.
So
strong.
Yeah, there you go.
I haven't watched it since the Seinfeld Reunion season. I watched that. That was brilliant. My favorite joke, though, that I remember ever seeing on it is, I think he's with his rabbi, and he points to a picture on the rabbi's desk. And he says, "Oh, that's my nephew. We lost him on 9/11." And he says, "Which tower?" He says, "Oh, no, he was on 9th Street. He got hit by a taxi." Just happened to be on 9/11. And the whole episode is about him trying to put the point across that you can't say that. Like that, you can't say you lost him on 9/11. And then they're like, "Can we bring a survivor to dinner?" And the one guy brings a Holocaust survivor, and the other guy brings Colby from Survivor.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many episodes. The other fantastic episode is the one where Larry has to he picks up a hooker because he's trying to get to the Dodgers game, and he knows he's going to be stuck in traffic, and to drive in the carpool lane, he has to have another person in the car. So he picks up a hooker and takes her to the game with him. I mean, it's just, there's so many episodes that are like that.
Or the one where his friend died with his golf club. And he got buried with his favorite golf club, and Larry wants to get the golf club out of the casket before they bury him.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you have not watched, Jeff, you're an example.
Yeah.
You watched 6-7 seasons and haven't watched the last couple. It is as good, if not better, than it has always been.
I will catch it up. This has been an amazing show. Oh my God, we've talked about so much. Can't believe it. Applause.
Nice job.
Oh, applause.
Nice job, Howard.
I might have applause. No, that wasn't. Oh, there we go. Can you hear
There we go. Yeah.
Great show.
Excellent.
So anywho, but all right. Well, this was great. We covered a lot in this episode. This was an insane Curb Your Enthusiasm, What We Do in the Shadows, The Wire, season 1, Basketball or Nothing, The Devil Next Door. We've got everything. Drug bus, basketball, Nazis, and funny Jewish people. We covered the entire spectrum. There's nothing. This show will go down in history.
I feel like we've all learned something.
Bob, say goodnight. Remind everyone where they can find you.
You're on mute, Bob. Bob, we
You've
can't
muted
hear you.
yourself,
You're on
Bob.
mute.
All right, Bob's muted. Tim, thanks for joining us again. I appreciate it. Remind us where you can we can find you?
So right now, the latest episode of Pop Culture Addicts is available on YouTube and your favorite audio podcast provider. And that's an interview with Mark Pellegrino from American Rust and Supernatural and Lost and a bunch of other shows. Really great episode there. You could also find Funny Science Fiction on Twitter as well, and YouTube and all the others, and Focused on Forward as well at Podcast FOF on Twitle.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us.
I
again,
had to
Tim.
mute. I'm sorry. My
Bob,
dogs were
tell us,
barking.
remind us where we can hear the Sal and Bob show.
Every platform you can think of, iTunes, Stitcher, Pandora, you name it. And come see us in Northville once a month at Janitti's Hole in the Wall Theater. We're sold out through December, so get your January tickets now.
You need to have me on that show. Ron, say goodnight.
Yeah, good night, guys. See me Wednesday nights, 9:30, crossing the streams and guesting on some of your local shows. Appreciate it.
Rosner, say goodnight.
Good night. I'll be here on my couch trying not to eat leftover Halloween candy.
All right. And don't forget, you can catch us on Fireside now. Go to firesidechat.com/Jeff Dwoskin. Get the Fireside app if you're on the iOS. We're going to keep going until somebody gets on stage and talks to us. We're sure it's going to happen one of these days.
It's going to be Jessica. It's got to be Jessica.
It's got to be Jessica or Stephanie. She was there too. And then Jeff Dwoskin, live from Detroit, the Jeff Dwoskin Show. As Bob said earlier, the greatest podcast in the world, and I don't disagree. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you next time on Crossing the Streams. And that has been another episode of Crossing the Streams. Join us every Wednesday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time, live on Facebook and YouTube. Follow the Jeff Dwoskin Show on YouTube to be alerted every time we go live with your hosts, Jeff Dwoskin, Ron Lippett, Howard Rosner, Bob Phillips, Sal D'Amelio. We're all in the socials. Follow us. Listen to our podcasts, live from Detroit, the Jeff Dwoskin Show, the Sal and Bob Show. Check them all out, and we'll see you next week and every week when we cross more streams right here. See you then.